Hey, hopefully I can keep this connection today. My name is Kerry Mussington. I am founder and director of Suicide Prevention, Mind Over Matter Project, also known as the MOM Project. Today I want to talk to you about nature, birds. You know, I've had an elderly person, a very old person, come to us in a state of depression, shut themselves off from the outside world, bolted and locked doors, and are scared at their wits, all because they've been told to stop feeding the birds, which is what they've been doing for 11 years in their own back garden. Feeding the birds is not a criminal offence or against the law. But when it starts to bring rats infestation, first of all, you've got to prove where they're coming from. Simple bird feeders, as you see, I have a bird feeder on the corner right there. For me, if somebody told me to stop feeding the birds, it would devastate me because, you know, for this elderly person, you know, it's been therapeutic and therapy, particularly when they lose their loved ones and they find an interest in nature. You know, preserving nature is what we're supposed to be doing. So feeding the birds is not against the law. But what nosy neighbours do is ridicule the individual at the age that they are, knowing that life is so precious at this stage to enjoy and embrace every minute. So when you have got elderly folk just taking therapy through nature, you know, along comes a nosy neighbour, that's the way I'm going to look at it, and says, stop doing it. And yet that person was there before they were. So when a nosy neighbour says, stop feeding the birds because it's because they've seen a rat, well, I'll disagree with that, because at the end of the day, UB40 said there's a rat in the kitchen. What am I going to do? You know, why blame it on the elderly man? Don't they realise that to impose on someone's life, hi darling, to impose in someone's life and their privacy and tell them to stop doing something when they've been doing it for 11 years, what it actually does is it deflates that person. Actually, you could actually make them lose their life because you're taking away a lifeline, something that's kept them going, something they look forward to. And because you're miserable, and that's the way I look at it, miserable, got nothing better to do and not preserve life, you're going to go out and destroy it. I don't like that. It feels uncomfortable. It saddens me to have such an elderly person come to me in floods of tears. And I said an elderly person. You know, quality of life isn't very good, and the most they can get out is feed the birds. That's nothing, is it? So when someone's been doing things for 11 years plus, and the newcomer comes along and says, stop it, it's a frightening ordeal. And it calls the person to retract, shut the door, shut the outside world. Isolation is not good for anyone. And we're always saying, look, we've got to get out of this isolation. Find things, positive things to do. So when they find positive things to do, hiya Charmaine, hello Ziggy. When they find positive things to do in therapeutic stuff, it is good for their mental health. Good, completely for their mental health, to do things that are therapeutic. And if somebody starts to home in on that and says, right, no, we need to take it away, what you're doing is taking away a lifeline, something that they have replaced unhealthy coping strategies, replaced it with new ones, found therapeutic in it, and it's keeping them happy, smiling. It's keeping nature alive. There's no rats here. Okay, the only rat is the dirty rat that wants to turn around and keep blinking environmental health. That's a dirty rat. That's how I feel about it. Rather than do mediation or speak and understand why somebody needs that therapy, don't try and destroy their life. That is disgusting. We have to get on with our neighbours in this world, right? Because one of the things that we do is love their neighbour. That's what we're supposed to do. Get on with each other. But if you fall out with the neighbours, it makes you uncomfortable living in your own home, in your own back garden, and perhaps you've got nowhere to run. You see, and that's that nowhere to run that causes people to lose their life because they don't know how else to express, what to do, or who's going to help them solve the problems. Well, in this case, I think at the end of the day, I've done my research. It is not illegal to feed the birds in your own back garden. However, if there is vermin, check the bins, check the areas to make sure it's all clean and tidy. But feeding the bird, you're not responsible for the birds. They can just come from anywhere. They land on your roof. You're not responsible for them. Yeah, you can feed them, but we're meant to. We're encouraged. You know, we are encouraged to feed these things. And they're all part of nature, aren't they? They're all part of a reproductive system that goes on. But my point is, you can't replace human life, and to take away someone's therapy because they feed the birds is ridiculous, particularly in their own garden, and it's not bugging anybody else. I mean, we encourage in our communal garden that we've got here is that there's lots of bird feeders around, and we actually can look out the window and look at all the robins and all the other birds that I don't know the names of, apart from a seagull and a pigeon, but you know, and a blue tit. So there isn't many birds names I know, but at the end of the day, I do know they are beautiful, wonderful species and should be appreciated. And I think before you rat out your neighbours, consider the fact of how much damage you will do to their health by trying to prevent them from the things that they were once doing before you arrived. That's the way I look at that, okay? For me, like I said, when they're elderly, and that we're talking about pensioners here, pensioners that are coming to the Mom Project and upset because, you know, and I'm glad they did, because they ain't struggling alone here. So due diligence, that's what it is. But I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. I think there's a little bit of jealousy going on around here than meets the eye. And I think it's disgusting when somebody knows that somebody is vulnerable and somebody almost took their life not long ago. Now you want to put in the boot a little bit more and say that the person has to stop feeding birds, the only therapy that they have. Well, if they're watching this, I want you to think long and hard that when you remove someone's lifeline like that, you may be responsible for what happens next. So think about your actions before you place immature, and I think it's very immature, particularly that, you know, at the end of the day, is not affecting them because they don't own a bloody garden, for starters. So I think when someone's bird watching, literally at the end of the day, just be kind, stop being cruel, and think about what devastation you may do when you start grassing up or ratting out your neighbours just over a bird. I'm sorry, but that's just... I want to come out with something comedian here, but it ain't going to work, is it? You know, bird, really? I think COVID is the more drastic thing right now, and what's going on is depression, right? It's causing a lot of depression. And for me, you know, I think the last thing we need to do is sitting there worrying about birds and who can't feed a blinking animal or bird anymore. And I know that if you start asking people to stop feeding a bird in their own garden, and it's their therapy, you're taking away their therapy. That's the most important part. The therapy to help them with their mental health and recovery so they don't go back into relapse and try and take their life. So which is more important here? Taking away the birds, yeah, stop, to tell someone to stop doing something in their own back garden. Is that more important? Or is that life more important? Because at the end of the day, it's important to me that that person is looked after and supported and has their voice heard against such nonsense. Nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. Who the hell do you think you are? You know, you've only been here 5 minutes and this person's been here years. So that tells you that it's a personal issue, isn't it? A very personal issue. Not really about yourself. You made it personal. We will make it personal too, to make sure that our person is protected and that they are getting the therapy that they need to help them through this ordeal. Bird food, birds of a feather fly together. That's right. I'm a pretty tough bird at the end of the day myself, and when you touch or hurt people in my surroundings and there's people that we come to, then we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that they get their voice heard, and it's fairly judged, completely fairly judged. But I don't know really anybody that has been told they cannot feed their own birds in the back garden of themselves. Their own back gardens, should I say. You know, their own back garden. To be told, you might as well not live there anymore then. If you're going to be told what to do, you can't feed a bird. I mean, you might, don't feed the birds. Don't feed the hedgehogs. Don't do nothing there. If you've got hedgehogs and you feed hedgehogs, then they can contribute to vermin. Very true. But they're protected species, right? Just like birds. They're protected species. If you put cat food out, then again, you know, you could possibly create vermin again, but it wouldn't be because of you. You can't do right for doing wrong when you want to feed animals to protect them, and then you've been told to stop feeding them. For me, birds I'll say it again, birds that fly together, flock together, stay together, right? For me, when pensioners come to me, that's another saying. That is a big problem. And the quality of life has to remain a good quality of life. Therefore, feeding the birds is more important right now to this person. And if this person has to stop feeding, then your moths will be taking away their lifeline, and that's a responsibility you will have on yourself. How dare you infringe and impose on other people's lives that has never done anything wrong to you or bothered you or nothing like that. When somebody is elderly, just let them live out their life without grief, because life is precious and time doesn't wait for anyone, but without grief and over something so petty. So let me just make a point. If I could get up, let me just make a point here. That if this person is accused and gets in trouble because they're feeding the birds in the back garden, then I'm going to stand with them because I'm feeding my birds in the front garden and the back garden. And I'll stand with them on this. I can understand the vermin, but not to my knowledge have I ever seen any. Second of all, you know, like I said, we'll do everything in our power to make sure this voice is heard and to make sure that they are protected as well as the birds are protected too. So nature is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And when you've got this kind of bird talking back at you, watch out for the squeak.